Meeting of Dubbo Regional Council. I advise that this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. All those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements, and upon joining these online meetings, you accept the condition that your image may be recorded and streamed to the internet, as well as being retained in the archive of the recorded council meetings and standing committee meetings. I now open the July 2024 Ordinary Council meeting, the time being 5:30 p.m. Can I ask Councillor Wright to recite the prayer, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. O God, grant that by the knowledge of thy will, all we may resolve shall work together for good, and we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Burns, could I ask you to do acknowledgement of country?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. We've got no leave of absences, so all councillors are here tonight. Conflict of interest. I've got one conflict of interest from one of our staff members, Ms Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Significant non-pecuniary at item CCL 24176. I'm a board member of Macquarie Homestay.
Right, thank you. Any councillors with any conflicts of interest? No, thank you. Being none, I move on to the next item. Is CCL 24/161 Public Forum, and I will just go through the rules for public forum. You have 5 minutes to speak when members come forward, or when members of the public come forward to the microphone. I just ask you to state your name and the item on which you're speaking. I've got a bell here, and at 4 minutes 30, I'll give a small tap to let you know that you've got 30 seconds left. At 5 minutes, the microphone will be cut off, and I'll ring the bell repeatedly so you know you've got 5 minutes on there. And just keep in mind, there's not a large audience here tonight, but I just remind the audience members that there's be no clapping, cheering, jeering, booing, excitement in the audience. We want to make sure that everyone stays respectful to the people that are speaking. So I've got 2 registered speakers. After those 2 registered speakers, if there is time, which there will be, left, then anyone else can come forward. I'll invite them at that particular time. But the 2 speakers I've got are Mr Rodney Crowfoot and Mr Richard Mutton. I'll start with the order in which they registered to speak. So Mr Crowfoot, if you'd like to come forward, please, again, state your name and the item in which you're speaking of.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name's Rod Crowfoot. I'm the Managing Director of Macquarie Homestay here in Dubbo. I think Macquarie Homestay has become a quite a silent success story of not only Dubbo, but certainly for the region as well. Hopefully most of you have heard some context around who we are and what we do, but it's important sort of for our local community to really sort of be more aware of what we are and what we do, because even though they don't use us, we are a really, really critical part of the Dubbo community, but also the community of sort of northern and western and rural New South Wales. For some context, we opened in January 2019. We provide patient accommodation for people across pretty well the federal seat of Parks who have to come to Dubbo for specialist medical care. That can involve not only specialist appointments, but also surgeries, admission to hospital, treatment at sort of various medical facilities around Dubbo. Some of them are travelling 600-700 kilometres, many hours one way, and so affordability for accommodation is a really, really critical part of them being able to access their medical care when they need to. And Macquarie Homestay has very much been established to try and make sure that the cost of accommodation isn't a reason why people choose not to look after their healthcare. Contextually, to give you an idea, we see about 140 patients a month presently come and stay with us. On average, they spend about 4 nights per stay with us as well. As I touched on, they come from pretty well the size of the federal seat of Park, so it's a substantial footprint of New South Wales that they're coming from, and they're seeing Dubbo as a major specialist hub, and I think that's a kudos to the health service and kudos for council in helping support the expansion of many of those specialist areas. In particular, our largest cohorts that stay with us are coming for specialist appointments, but they're also coming for various cancer treatments now with the opening of the Western Cancer Centre, for maternity, for birthing and other obstetrics appointments and surgery, and they're the sort of really dominant ones where they choose to stay with us. The statistics that we're not proud of, but we're certainly looking to address, is the number of people we have to turn away. We, in April this year, we turned away nearly 6 people a day. And in this day and age, we just don't see that as being appropriate, and we have a solution on how we're going to fix that. Presently, we're running 17 units. We're full over half of every month, and currently under construction is another 26 units, which is there to support the Cancer Centre. We also have assumed and taken over the operations of what many would know as the Christine Griffiths units. We've entered a lease with them, and so we'll be opening those for us to use for the patient space. So that'll give us 50 units to operate from by the end of the year. With that increase, obviously, comes an increase in demands, and a lot of that is our administration demands, and hence our request for council support. With this increase, obviously increase in volume of units, we all need to increase our support staff. We need to provide appropriate places for our guests to have confidential conversations. We need to provide an increased space for our volunteers to be able to come and use and access Macquarie Homestay and support the services that we provide. But in also doing so, it actually frees up the current unit that we operate, which is actually a family unit, which is where our office is. And that particularly will, with the relocation into this demountable office, will actually give us roughly an extra 100 families a year we can help support with accommodation. We do have a master plan that actually allows us to build a more permanent office facility, but it's going to cost us north of $2.7 million. So what we're looking to do is build a temporary office building on site that will help us sort of manage our needs in the immediate future, but with still a view that we will need to expand into a more permanent facility in time to come. We're asking Dubbo Regional Council to support us in helping alleviate some of these pressures. In doing so, that will also acknowledge and support the 270,000 people from the region who very much rely on Dubbo Hospital and Dubbo Health Service, and certainly will show the region that Dubbo Regional Council is a supporter of the region in supporting us in our expansion needs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rod. I appreciate your time. Now, the next speaker I've got registered is Mr. Richard Mutton. Mr. Mutton, I'm sure you're very familiar with what happens in council being on the other side there for a change.
Thank you.
5 minutes, start with your name and what you're speaking on, and your time starts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard Mutton. I have retired from everything: radio, voice acting, Department of Education, swimming coaching, swimming training, learn to swim, but I haven't retired my memory from one important factor. That when I was on council, I fought for it, lost. And I'm fighting for it again now, and that is for adequate and good swimming facilities in this city. You've got $30,000. Thank you to Councillor Shibley for that. And I believe that $30,000, some of it should be spent, as we did when I was a councillor, to go and view other swimming locations throughout New South Wales. Now, there's some good ones to look at. Orange, for example, not far away. You could go and look at Lismore, and you could look at a couple in Canberra, as we did for the theatre. And look what we ended up with, something that was well planned and well executed. Apart from that, I've put this particular bit of information to a couple of people. They laughed. But I don't want you council to laugh at this. I am being somewhat serious in this. The Olympic Games are on at the moment, and swimming will start in one of 5 pools housed in a hangar in the outskirts of Paris. And one of the 5 pools that were built for the cost of 70 million euros is inflatable. Inflatable inside a hangar. I think when they let it down, you might like to give them a ring and say, what's it worth? And then talk to Wes and stick it in a hangar. But I mean, look, on those sort of things aside, if we are going to cover the present pool, which hasn't been looked at in any shape or form to be fixed in the last 20 years, it was built in 1974, we should seriously look at what the ecosystem has been done in Paris to cover that pool. They have covered it like that. High at the end, in the middle, done in wood. Why? It is 25% more effective with heating. And they've got solar panels on the top of a wooden frame. That is something seriously that should be looked at, because there'll be savings there. The other thing that could be looked at, again, eco-friendly from this French pool, is the fact that they have movable beams inside the pool. So the pool that they've actually built for the competition is 73 metres long. And they've got a beam there that they can move to make it 50 metres for competition and 33 metres for water polo. Now, with a pool, say 25 by 25, we could incorporate, again, that particular system where you'd only have to heat half of it. All right. I really think we've got to do something about the aquatics in Dubbo. Whether it's on the same side or whether we talk to us, I don't know. But really, some decent planning's got to go into this, and I believe councillors should go and have a look. Just before I finish, I just want to put in a word for Australia Day. I know it's been legislated 24 for 7 days, and I don't think a former councillor who gave this council a serve on Sky News during the week realises that is legislation. But really and truly, I happened to turn up in Vancouver on the day of the Canadian National Day, and an Indian Canadian spoke there, and he spoke of the atrocities that the Canadian people had been carried out on the Canadian Indian. But he didn't mention the word invasion. Invasion means taking over something by force. He didn't talk about the atrocities at great length. He made one very, very salient point, and that point is Australia Day, or his day, was important because it wasn't to proclaim the legitimacy and its successes. It was to proclaim its legitimacy and its successes and its failures. And he believed that a day was needed, one day, not two, not spread over 2 days. One day was needed to do exactly that. Legitimise what is going on in the country at the moment, what is going on in the future, remember the past, the atrocities of the past in Canada, which are as bad as they were here, if not worse, and celebrate it on one day and one day alone. And so I put my case forward tonight for you councillors to look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Button. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Now, we still have time left in public forum, so there are some other members of the gallery. If anyone else does wish to come forward from the gallery and speak on a topic of their choosing related to council, then you're more than welcome to come forward. Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item, CCL 24/162, confirmation of minutes. Can someone move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Wright. Discussion or debate? Councillor Black.
Thank you very much. Yes, reading through the minutes and then going back and looking at the video from the last meeting on CCL 24/149, which was the operational model of the Dubbo livestock sale yards. It's got the mayor down for voting for the status quo for council to retain ownership, but I couldn't see where the mayor actually voted. There didn't seem to be even a flinch in his demeanour or anything like that. I was just a question: how was that vote recorded with the mayor against? Because in the code of meeting practice, I think it says that if you don't vote, that's recorded as a vote against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. You'll probably very rarely see my hand go up for votes at a council meeting. So the vote is called in terms of the votes that go up. If there's any question in terms of which way, Ms Rouse will ask me which way I voted. I'll inform Ms Rouse of that, and it's recorded there in the minutes. Any further, Councillor Black?
So how can we be sure, how can the public have confidence that you actually voted the way that you did if you didn't vote publicly? There was no actual movement or indication at the time of which way you voted. It's just recorded in the minutes as that after the event. Thanks.
Well, I think the minutes are public, so the public can see quite clearly which way the vote's gone according to those minutes. If I had an issue with what's recorded in those minutes, then I'd be bringing it up now as the option when the minutes are put on display and voted on to say that it's confirmation of minutes. So I think the public can quite clearly see which way the vote went. Further, Councillor Black?
My comment now. I'm going to vote against adopting these minutes because from viewing the footage a few times, and I see comment on the Facebook and talking to people around town, I just couldn't see that the mayor actually voted in favour of the modified status quo, and I think that that was a very important vote where the public did need an indication. It looked to me like there was no vote, which then should be recorded as against that motion. So rather than move an amendment and seek to amend those minutes, I'll just vote against adopting them because of that that matter. Thank you.
And you might, as you watched the last meeting, Councillor Black, I'm sure you would have seen my hand go up probably 0 times throughout the meeting. I suppose the important part about that is that the minutes show exactly what's recorded there, and they've got those displayed quite clearly there. So I really don't see a major issue with that. But you've made your point. Thank you. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item on the agenda is CCL 24/163, mayoral appointments and meetings. Have someone move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wells. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to those?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any questions or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/164, status of notices of motion, quarterly update. Have someone move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Ivey, do you wish to speak to that?
Just a question. Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the notice of the motion that I had proposed and was passed in relation to contacting the solar farm proponents in Wellington that hadn't been party to a VPA. I noticed that it was a little bit unclear in the minutes in the report there whether or not that letter had been sent to the proponents, and I was just wondering if I could get some clarification on that.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Through you, Mr Wood, to Mr Wood. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr Mayor. So that was a snapshot in time as preparing the report, and as you say, the draft letters were prepared to be sent mid-July. So my understanding is they have been sent. You will note there was some delay in terms of sending the correspondence after the resolution. And again, I've got records where staff were in direct contact with the proponents to get them ready for a letter. So rather than a cold call letter that would be somewhat potentially ignored, it was to build their understanding of council's position, then follow up with the formal correspondence. So hence the delay in that regard.
Thank you, Mr Wood. Does that cover that, Councillor Ivey? Yep. Any further discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/165, report of the Infrastructure Planning Environment Committee. Have that moved. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Seconded by Councillor Goff. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, report of the Culture and Community Committee. Have someone move that way. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Seconded by Councillor Wells. Councillor Goff, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wells.
Just wanted to make it. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to make commentary, if it's the right place, around one of the committees that occurs in that particular forum, and that's the youth committee. And I wanted to just do a shout out to the new people that have come on board. And at the last meeting, I was really impressed by the new members of the youth council, and looking forward to seeing some differences there. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? No, there being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item is CCL 24/167, report of the Corporate Services Committee. Councillor Chowdhury, you moved. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Goff. Councillor Chowdhury, are you moving that save and accept CSC 24/39?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Right, yeah, thank you. Any other items that need to be removed from that particular committee, councillors? No. Councillor Chowdhury, do you wish to speak to that meeting?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Any discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So now we've got CSC 24/39, and we've got to have someone move a motion in relation to that. And I believe Councillor Ivey is going to move something. And I'll just, for people watching and listening at home, this has got two components to it. So we'll do the two components separately. I believe Councillor Ivey is going to bring something forward in relation to the Wellington ceremony in particular. And so if that's the case, we'll do that. We'll deal with that one. And then someone might bring forward something in relation to the Dubbo ceremony. So there'll be two separate discussions and debates about the two ceremonies. Councillor Ivey, is that correct?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That is indeed correct. I'd like to move that one, that the Australia Day civic ceremony and event for Wellington be held at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, the 25th of January 2025 at Cameron Park, and that two, expressions of interest process be undertaken to form Australia Day event committees for both Dubbo and Wellington. and that three, any additional activities surrounding the civic ceremonies in 2025 be determined between council events team and the Australia Day event committees.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Ivey, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would. I'm proposing that the Australia Day ceremony be held as it has been for the last 2 years on the eve of Australia Day. The reasons why we have moved that way previously have been well documented. We're trying to make the whole event more inclusive. I really do take on board some comments that Mr. Mutton made in his public forum there about the Canadian Day. Look, my absolute wish in respect to Australia Day is that we preserve the 26th of January as being a very important day, perhaps the most important day in Australia's history, but that we recognise that it means different things to different people, that we do, and recognising the 26th of January, we have to acknowledge the injustices, the problems that Indigenous First Nations people suffered, but that please can we now stand back and realise what a fantastic country we have, and we should all be absolutely behind celebrating what a fantastic opportunity Australia gives to all its residents, and that we can do that while still recognising some of the injustices that did happen in the past. I think the best way of doing that is to perhaps just remove the ceremony from Australia Day itself. We're still celebrating Australia Day, but we're just doing it a little bit detached. We are saying that, look, it's not traditionally what has been celebrated traditionally, which was the European settlement of Australia, is not what we are on about now. We are celebrating what a country we have now, from where we came from the people that have made Australia what it is, and we all recognise that. And I would like to think that by holding the ceremony on the eve of Australia Day, then we're better able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have an issue with it, the celebrations occurring for particularly the citizenship ceremonies on the 24th and the 25th. And I have always been a very strong advocate around not having it on the 26th for specific reasons that most people know in this community, excuse me, where I stand. And, you know, I listened to Mr. Mutton's, presentation then and hear what was said about Canada, and I would probably not agree that we don't, that the atrocities occurred here in Australia were less harmful than they were in Canada. I've read and heard and lived the many atrocities for, my whole, I'm not going to say how many years. For me, I agree. This country is amazing. It's beautiful and we want to celebrate together. The reasons for not celebrating it on the 26th is because it's our day of mourning and a day of survival. We celebrate the survival of our culture across the nation, and in some areas it might look different to other areas. But that's my reason in terms of wanting the date shifted. And I know that there's been some media interviews in Sydney that I don't necessarily agree with, but that's okay. This is a democracy that we live in. For me, I think it's really important that, yes, we acknowledge it, but we also understand that a day of survival for the First Nations people in this country is important. And not only is that important, is that we recognise that we're now 3% of the population of the nation, and it is less than some of the new citizenships here, which is multicultural and beautiful, and we love that, and we love our multicultural nation. But we also do not want to see our nation or our peoples, become less and less. So for me, it's about acknowledging the day in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Black and then Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to vote against this because, like I said in the committee meetings, ultimately the date is set by the Commonwealth Government and not by Council. And like I said it before, I fundamentally believe that we should be holding the events on the day, whatever date that is that's been set by the federal government. Now, if the Commonwealth government wants to look at changing the date, which is something that they probably should look into, then we should have it on that date. But until then, I think, to me, I can understand reasons why people would want to move it to a separate date, etc., etc. But until that date is changed by the Commonwealth Government, I think that we should just be having it on that day. Same as we do with Christmas Day and Good Friday and Anzac Day. And thankfully we haven't heard about giving people a long weekend off and stuff like that this time, as far as we've got in this debate today. But it's got to come from the Commonwealth Government, and I just fundamentally think that we should be having it on the date it's set, not one that we sort of just decide. Now, there is the Andrew Giles. He's had his own ups and downs as a federal minister. Has said you can have it 3 days either side of January 26, but that's sort of like a real cop-out. We should, as a country, just decide on a date that works for everyone and go forward with that. But until then, it's on the 26th of January, and it makes sense to just have it on that date. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that we started thinking about changing the celebrations for Australia Day 3 years ago, and that's why we've made the changes over the last couple of years. We're moving towards making the changes to stop celebrating it on the 26th. Because the 26th of January is a day of mourning for Aboriginal people. And for those that don't know, they're the original inhabitants of this country. Just thought I'd chuck that in. And on the 26th of January, most Aboriginal people mourn the day. And the reason we are in this conversation right now, and we did it for the last couple of years, is because of the issues that the country's having with the 26th of Australia between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. So if we've started making moves to change it, why are we stopping it? Why are we going to stop that at this point? We've started making the moves. A lot of people are agreeable to it. A lot of people are happy with the way things were done last year, but these are moves towards stopping the celebrations on the 26th. I don't know what date would suit. I've got an idea. 1st of January would be the best because that's the Constitution when it was first initiated on 1st of January 1901 or 1900 or something. Sorry?
19th of April.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Burns, just resume your seat for a moment, please. Just resume your seat. Sorry, I did mention before that any outbursts from the public are not acceptable, not tolerable. So please refrain from making any outbursts from the forum, or people will be ejected from the forum. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Burns. Resume.
Forgot what I was saying. But the 26th of January has been Australia Day since, I think, the 50s. So all of us know that it was the 26th of January. Our parents and our grandparents probably don't realise that 26th of January was anything. So with that said, I don't know why, I don't know how strongly people want to hold on to that date, but I'm just saying from the Aboriginal perspective, Aboriginal people would rather see that date changed. That's all I want to say. I don't think I have anything else, or I might have forgot stuff, but I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Any further, councillors? No, you can ask a question, Councillor Wells. You can't enter the debate again. You can ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the actual motion in our papers, it says 6:30 p.m. on Friday, the 24th of January for Wellington, and 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, 25th of January for Dubbo. However, Councillor Ivey said different dates. So can we clarify, please?
Certainly. So Councillor Ivey didn't move what was in the papers. Councillor Ivey's just focused on Wellington to start with, and he's talking about 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, 25 January, as the date and time for the celebration in Wellington only. So this isn't discussing Dubbo at all at the moment. This is just discussing Wellington. So 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, 25 January.
Thank you.
So clarified there. Any other questions or debate, councillors? Councillor Wright.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, probably getting a bit ahead of myself, but citizenship ceremony, am I right in suggesting that it's only held in Dubbo? And if that's the case, would there be one potentially held in Wellington? Is there what sort of flexibility is there around the citizenship ceremony on Australia Day as well?
So it does come down to how many people might be needing to be conferred at that particular time. In previous years, there haven't been people that need to be conferred in Wellington. There have been in Dubbo, basically just because of the population size of Dubbo more than anything else. But that was the critical part, what Councillor Black mentioned in terms of the Minister Andrew Giles, that was the relevant part. So we go back 2 years ago when we first started this process. At that time, the Australian Citizenship Ceremonies Code did not allow you to have a ceremony on any other day but Australia Day if you had more than 20 citizens conferred throughout the year. And so that allowed Dubbo, or didn't allow Dubbo to move, but it allowed Wellington because they had less than 20 throughout the year. In the change that the Minister made, and in the vicinity of the 14th of December 2022 that was made, and don't quote me on that exact date, but close around that sort of time frame, the Minister made a change, or the government made a change, and the Minister announced it that you could have your citizenship ceremony up to 3 days before Australia Day, or up to 3 days after Australia Day, or on the day. So you've got a 7-day window. If there happened to be anyone in Wellington next year that wanted to become a citizen and was there ready to go, then that could have a citizenship ceremony as part of the ceremony holding it the day before. Nothing, no further question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or debate, councillors? No. So Councillor Ivey, right of reply. I'll just remind you, right of reply, nothing new, only the things that were said in the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two points really. Councillor Burns, whose opinion I do respect well and truly, mentioned that he views Australia Day, the 26th of January, as a day of mourning. I know where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. But what I would love to do is to progress our population, in particular our Indigenous population, that to be able to say we are here on the 26th of January as we are sitting around here now. We're on the 26th of January because of what happened so many years ago. Yes, there were problems with it, but it is the reason why our country is what it is today. And I think that we absolutely should recognise that and if not celebrate it, then do absolutely recognise it. The other point I'd just like to raise is that Councillor Black mentioned about the Commonwealth Government. If they want to change it, they can change it. Councillor Black, the Australia Day ceremony for the national ceremony where the Australian of the Year are awarded, the most prestigious awards that we confer as a nation, are announced on a ceremony on the eve of Australia Day. The Commonwealth Government for a number of years recognises that we can celebrate the 26th of January with a ceremony that occurs on the eve of Australia Day. I think that actually, rather than detract from the point that you raised, as you raised it, it actually enhances our argument or our reasoning for having it on the eve of Australia Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. So we have the motion before us. Just to clarify, would you like to just read out the pertinent point of that again, Councillor Ivey, just to make sure everyone's clear on that? Not all the components about the committee, etc., just the main point about the time frame.
The main point, item 1, that the Australia Day civic ceremony, an event for Wellington, be held at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday the 25th of January 2025 at Cameron Park.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Ivey. So we have that before us. All those in favour of that motion? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, thank you, councillors. So now a related motion to this same item on the agenda is in relation to the Dubbo ceremony. So Councillor Schouder, I believe you've got a resolution there? Or
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Motion?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Dubbo Australia Day civic ceremonies and event will be held 8 a.m. on Sunday, 26th of January at the Victoria Park. Number 2, the expression of interest process be undertaken to form Australia Day event committee for Dubbo and Dubbo. Number 3, that any additional activities surrounding the civic ceremonies for 2025 will be determined between Council Events team and Australia Day event committees.
Thank you, Councillor Showery. Can someone second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Showery, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like a bit saddened, I really feel for Councillor Wells and Councillor Burns. I don't go against anything for a First Nation, but as a I think the Australia Day is for celebration, and we are the progressing nation, and we're going to be uniting and be one. So if we want to be one, then do the event on the 26th January. And as a Speaker of Council, Mr. Martin has mentioned, we need to be progress, and we need to show uniting to this society. So, and I believe a lot of our community make a noise, and they already reach out to most of us. All these councillors have been heard from the community. So I think I'm going with the community and trying to represent them, and I'll be stick on the 26th January for Dabo event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Showery. Councillor Wells.
Question or some guidance, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Is there an opportunity for me to foreshadow this motion to have it on the 25th on the Saturday evening?
So certainly all you do is just mention to your fellow councillors, which you've effectively done, that you would prefer it on the 25th. The way you would do that is I won't accept an amendment, obviously, because that would be a negative to what's proposed by Councillor Showery. So you would just speak against it when you get the chance in the debate and say, as you've done then, that if this motion is defeated, then you would move another motion that would say the ceremony in Dubbo be held on the 25th. And so that would be the way to go forward. So try and defeat this motion, encourage your fellow councillors to do that, and then have that motion ready to go to have the ceremony on the 25th. So I haven't got yours entering the debate yet. That's just foreshadowing that particular motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I enter the debate, please? I understand my colleague, Councillor Chowdhury, in listening to our community, and we should do that. My views that it should be on the 25th of January for reasons that we spoke of before. Dubbo has continued over the last couple of years to have it on the 26th, where we've been fortunate to have it on different days in Wellington, and they've proved to be quite successful with some great attendance from the First Nations community in Wellington. And so I believe, for all of the reasons that I've said before, that having the event or celebration on the 25th would be more suitable. That way you could have in the evening, and it enables you to avoid the heat that we very much do. It's very hot at that time of the year. And a social gathering on the Saturday evening with our rich community and the multicultural opportunities would, I think, be far better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Brack.
Thank you. Yes, I'll support Councillor Chowdhury's motion here. Like I said before, fundamentally, I believe that we should have these national events or commemorations, ceremonies, whatever, on the actual day, whatever day that is. Remembering that lots of states basically had it on different days until it was all brought under one umbrella. So there may be a different day out there that people can agree on and get around and stuff like that. But that's really something that the federal government really needs to decide. It would be handy to have the public holiday maybe like it used to be on the last Monday in January. That give everyone a long weekend then. That could be very good. Something that the federal government might like to do. But I think there's a pretty good case to be made that until that happens from the Commonwealth government, that we just hold the event on the day. As for this stuff to do with on the eve of Australia Day, we have the ceremony in Canberra, the world's biggest award of Australian of the Year, things like that. Like that was one ceremony prior to the actual Australia Day, everyone else having their ceremony on the 26th. So as for, what are we trying to trump that or what? That's a bit of a nonsense argument in my opinion. But yeah, I'll support Councillor Chowdhury's motion here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Other speakers? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I still support Councillor Chowdhury's motion in this instance. I did make a mention of the Australia Day, of the citizenship ceremonies, and I think it's important to have an opportunity for new citizens of the nation to stand up on Australia Day and proclaim that they're proud to become citizens of this country. So I'm sure there's plenty of other nations around the world whose citizens would love the opportunity to become citizens on such a special day. I know the word "celebrate Australia Day" has been bounced around a lot, and people can choose to celebrate how they like on Australia Day, and it's not a day of celebration for some. It is a day of reflection or mourning or whatever people choose to do on Australia Day. And ultimately, we are talking about a ceremony here, which is just a ceremony, but certainly important because it does recognise the outstanding contribution of a number of citizens across the LGA, and I think that's important that that's done in front of a largest crowd as possible. These people have contributed significantly. So, in my opinion, trying to find a day or time around around Australia Day that we can maximise the opportunity and maximise a crowd. From all accounts, the feedback, especially around social media, indicates to me that if this is held on Australia Day, there'll be thousands of people there. So I look forward to all those people that had their comments on social media about supporting Australia Day and having it on the day, because it looks like they're all going to be there. So we might need some more seats for that day, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Other discussion or debate, councillors? No further. So, Councillor Chowdhury, right of reply, again, only the things said in the debate.
No, all good, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. So we have that before us now. So do you want to just read the first line again, Councillor Chowdhury, just to make it very clear what we're talking about here?
Yeah. That Dabo Australia Day civic ceremony is an event be held at 8 a.m. on Sunday, 26th January at the Victoria Park.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. So all those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Right, yeah, thank you, councillors. Next item is the report of the Dubbo Regional Livestock Markets Advisory Committee. Councillor Etheridge, you've moved that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. And second to that, please. Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Etheridge, do you wish to speak to that? Not that one yet. We'll just do the advisory committee first.
Oh, good,
So
okay.
do you wish to speak to anything in the advisory committee meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The meeting that we held was very productive and everyone seemed to be on the same page. Everyone was open to whatever the staff's sourcing had found out and found our weak spots. The new fees and charges that we found that we had to implement was unanimously voted for. So we're all on the same page. We all want to see the Dubbo sale yards do really well, and I want to see the sale yards get up to industry best practice. And I'm sure under the leadership now that's going on out there now, the manager out there now, Harry Brennan, is already building good relationships with the agents and the producers. They're all on the same page. We just want to see Dubbo Regional Council get up and be the best it can be. So, it was good to see that everyone could get on the same page.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Any other discussion or debate on the items in the meeting? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the page 63, there was a, in general business section, Mr. Simmons had addressed that committee expressing his view, allowing new agent coming in a minimum fee for I believe that's $200. Can someone please explain what was his view, or is there any concern?
Certainly. I'll go to you, Mr. Wood, maybe to Ms. Bassingwaite, who I assume was at the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, the report proposed to the committee was just regarding the animal split. They did raise the $200 fee. We did say this would be reviewed as part of the ongoing review of fees and charges in its normal process, but a review of the improved status quo. That was the council resolution at the June meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Bassingwaite. Is that clear enough, Councillor Chowdhury?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate in relation to the Regional Livestock Markets Advisory Committee? No. There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Now, Councillor Etheridge, if you'd like to move the item that's come out about as a result of that, the LMAC 24/24 item, if you've got that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The alternative motion is, one, that the minutes of the Dubbo Regional Livestock Markets Advisory Committee, LMAC 24/24 meeting on the 9th of July 2024 be noted, that the per animal charge for cattle be $16, and that's inclusive of GST, be structured as yard dues $12.80 and agent fee of $3.20. That the per animal charge for sheep be $2, and that's inclusive of GST, be structured as yard fees $1.60 and agent fees of 40 cents.
Radio, thank you. Can I have someone second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Etheridge, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item is CCL 24/169, developing a public toilet policy strategy. Councillor Black.
Thank you. The notice of motion says this. 1. That just as numerous councils in New South Wales have done, Dubbo Regional Council develop a public toilet policy/strategy for adoption, with the vision of the policy or strategy being to ensure that Dubbo Regional Council provides an accessible, sustainable, safe and clean public toilet network that meets the current and future needs of the community. 2. That the CEO provide a report to Council with a draft policy addressing the areas that the policy would cover, to be broad and include those to do with the provision of public toilets, design, style, fit out, and all other associated categories as per similar policies. And 3, that to reduce the cost of developing a policy or strategy, the CEO or nominee approach other councils that have an adopted public toilet policy or strategy and ask to be allowed to use parts of their document as a template for a Dubbo policy or strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Burns, for that. So I brought this back in February, very similar policy, very similar motion, and it didn't get up. But we're going to spend about $1 million in the next year or two on public toilets, and there's no governing procedures as such tailored to Dubbo Regional Council area. Basically, it's the provision of public toilets is somewhat ad hoc, based on councillors deciding during the budget process. So we saw that with the 2 cemetery toilets. We saw it with what's going to happen down in Cameron Park, more toilets for Cameron Park, noting that that was really against the staff advice in the report. So we really do need a plan or strategy that sort of governs what toilets we need, set out a policy and say, right, these are the places where we need toilets, and also to design. I was up in Narrabri recently, and they have a fantastic new public toilet up there near their big convention centre in Riverside Park, and I inquired of the council as to how much that cost. I think it was like about, I can't remember, 6 or 8 individual units that all open into a space in the middle where people can wash their hands and stuff like that. And it was $320,000, which was the same as our 3D printed toilet. So looking at some of these, like looking at the Albury Council public toilet policy, I think there's a lot of good that would come for the community out of having an overarching design principle and a strategy to increase the provision of public toilets, but also making sure that we get the numbers right. So Wellington apparently doesn't have enough public toilets in Cameron Park. If we had a proper public toilet strategy, that wouldn't have occurred or shouldn't have occurred. So I think there'd be a lot of good to come out of this for the community and save just having to go and add on toilets later on after there's been a bit of a failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Discussion or debate, councillors? No. Sorry, question, Councillor Wright?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a question with respect to some of these infrastructure projects that may be coming up that Councillor Black's referring to on public toilets. With regards to design, planning, that sort of stuff, what sort of do any of those things go out to community consultation once they've been developed or passed through council? Does that give council an opportunity to do that? Maybe we'll recommend that at a point down the track if that sort of design or draft design was brought to council anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. I do know the Victoria Park one at the moment is under consultation, but just for a more comprehensive answer, I'll go through Mr Wood to Mr Arms.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I was about to say the Victoria Park amenities is currently out on public exhibition. Quite a good selection of feedback as well. I think around 90, maybe a bit north of 90. We put forward 3 locations and asking for their feedback. We also have best practice principles in mind as well, where it's not just a matter of plonking a toilet in any old spot. It's really strategic in how we do it and the design of it. And so, yes, we will be bringing that back to council for their contributions, and we would follow a similar process for the toilets at the cemeteries as well, which will be part of a master planning process. So I would certainly seek through the CEO to give you every opportunity to contribute to those.
Thank you, Mr Arms. That cover that off, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I will just make a comment. Look, I did vote against this a few months ago, and unfortunately, Councillor Black, I'll vote against it again now. Look, I think in this instance, for those particular items, if they are coming out to public consultation, especially those important ones in those strategic locations, I think that gives not only staff their ability to demonstrate their knowledge in that field, but also community to come forward with their ideas and thoughts for council to take on. You know, I understand the comments that Councillor made there with respect to, Councillor Black made with respect to, you know, a very broad policy. You know, we're talking about toilets potentially will be built in such a strategic location or an important location such as Victoria Park versus toilets, you know, potentially at Terramunda Mine Reserve or even out at Butlers Falls or where it might be out there. We're talking very different. And if we're going to make it so broad that it's going to leave it up to staff to make judgment decisions because it's so broad, I can't understand why such a policy would be required by this council. I know there's a New South Wales political representative. He has toilets on his agenda. I believe he's in a position of power. It might be a good idea for him to reach out and with his power and persuade his government to come up with a draft policy that maybe local councils could develop if they wanted to do that at some stage in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further discussion or debate? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I got a comment and a question, if I can remember the second one before I get through the first one. Looking at this, I think it might be a good idea because if we had this in place, we wouldn't have wasted 6 or 7 hours talking about toilets in the last year. So I'm going to vote for this. And I can't remember what my question was, so I'll let it go.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll vote against this motion because it doesn't make me any sense because this staff has mentioned infrastructure proposal we're going to public consultation, so it's just a waste of staff time and money. So I would like to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, how many other council in New South Wales doing that have that sort of policy?
Are you asking me to direct that question through to our staff?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to you, Mr. Wood, to stay with
At
you.
the risk of speaking with all staff, we would have to take that on notice because we haven't done a desktop analysis of how many councils have some form of toilet strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note that the previous time that this came up, I voted against it. On this occasion, I'm going to vote in favour of it. I don't see a problem with having a policy or some clear guiding principles around how we do this consistently across the whole region. It would underpin the thinking and part of the strategies, and there would be different ways and different toilets in different areas, of course, but an underpinning policy or guiding principles, I think having that consistency is a good idea, so I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Further, so I've just got a question there from Councillor Showery, Councillor Ivey, before I go to you. Councillor Showery.
Is there any rough estimate like how much gonna staff time gonna be is there any rough estimate like how much would be expenditure doing this sort of planning?
Thank you, Councillor Showery. So some sort of approximate expense of developing this policy. Mr. Wood?
Look, I'd be loath to say that. I guess I'd be looking to, working with the relevant director, being Mr. Arms, you'd be looking to do it with in-house resources. So it's a reallocation of priorities of work. I'm not sure if Mr. Arms would have any indicative numbers there. I guess you do your analysis, look at all the councils, what they got, to some of the commentary. You need it to be fit what our community needs and the breadth. You know, we've got a major urban centre, then we've got a smaller towns and villages, and then we've got rural reserves. So we need a policy setting that would cover that. So I don't know if I could forward on to Mr. Arms in any further insights there.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Arms?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All of that, plus what we have now, I think would be part of the equation. So what do we have now? How does it rate in terms of safety and compliance and meeting community needs, all those things that the CEO talked about? A real desktop analysis. We've done a small one, a really back of the envelope one, so not worth discussing here. But that is time consuming. That little element there. It's calling councillors and talking with them. Powerful, but time consuming. Piece of string, yeah, it's a reallocation of existing resources to create a document that we can give to you via the community.
Thank you, Mr. Arms. Mr. Wood, any further on that?
So, councillors, you've adopted an operational plan and budget, and therefore that gives the staff priorities. So if, as we develop the project, we feel that it would take staff away from something that's already adopted, we bring that back to a council, say, well, here's a priority based on the previous term, something has to give. So we would do a quarterly adjustment to the operational plan if there was going to be a demand that took people away. So that it's a normal way of working in terms of, should council make a resolution, we have to necessarily reprioritise.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. So, Councillor Showery, hopefully that vaguely answers your question.
Yeah, all good.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey.
I'll vote against the motion for reasons that have already been outlined, but perhaps one extra is that surely development of such a policy by this council would be premature. If we are going to develop a policy, surely it has to be within the guidelines, within the requirement, the public health regulations that have to be set by the state government. If there are such things as how the safe public health, safety, design principles, prerequisites for such a policy, then that must be set by the state government. And the case in point might be, which has been a little bit topical, about the design of a toilet, whether or not you can have individual cubicles that must open to the public, or whether they can be open to a confined space. Now that's a very big issue, because obviously where cubicles that are open to a public space are much more expensive to build per cubicle than in an area where they open to an internal area. So, if that is an issue that society needs to deal with, surely that is the domain of the state government. So I would think that let's look at what the state government come up with in this regard. If they do come up with a policy, then maybe it is up to us to develop a policy under that. But to do it now, before the state government has announced or has recorded as a priority, I think would be premature. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. And I might just ask a question. I'm not sure whether you want me to send it to Mr. Arms or Mr. Wallace, but just in relation to regulations, presumably there are some state government regulations existing at the moment when you build toilets. There's obviously some standards about the width of a door for the disabled toilet, for example. So I assume there are some standards in relation to toilets as it stands. So if you're happy for me to throw that to you, Mr. Wood, to Mr. Wallace. Yes, to Mr. Wallace, thank you.
Thank you. And you did partially answer the question yourself. There's the Building Code of Australia sets requirements for numbers of toilets in certain circumstances, and that generally is associated with a use. So that wouldn't necessarily apply to a park or a reserve toilet. The Building Code of Australia does call up standards for disabled access, and they are very well determined within that standard. However, beyond that, there are no design parameters that we need to apply to the actual design of a public toilet.
So I suppose my question there relates to cost shifting. We often talk about cost shifting, and for us to go and develop that, or 128 councillors to go and develop that across the state, it feels like another example of cost shifting. If it's important for the state government, they've got some standards there, mainly in relation to disabled, but if there are standards that are required, then obviously the state government can develop that without incurring any costs on this council. And again, that example of cost shifting. So further questions, Councillor Mann.
Obviously, this has been topical now for many months, and Councillor Burns mentioned the amount of airtime that we've talked about toilets and the publicity, good, bad, or indifferent, that it's got on local and national networks. But what my question is, to me, like a lot of the feedback and the I guess hysteria almost that has been driven from this is all about opinions, and it's the same as I like a red car and you like a green car, or whatever that might be. It's really a chocolate or vanilla case. They're both good, but you just got to choose which one you want. Currently, they don't like the one that we chose, which I think has driven most of this conversation, is the West Dubbo toilet. So, in the planning process, sorry, this is a question. In the planning process, where do we look at when we obviously know that the different designs of toilets that are being made, different Cameron Parkers are open to the public. This one over here is the closed-in one, so whatever. So just talk us through the process on how we come up with what we decide to put where we put it now, without having a policy to have to refer to. Just how would that roll out?
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Mr Wood, do you want to take that?
Well, I think, yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think what we're currently doing with Victoria Park is what we're going through now, is you get buy-in, and that is that shift we have in terms of community engagement more broadly. So allowing people to have that input into developing the designs, and then staff applying their technical knowledge. But through Mr Mayor, I might throw for further comment to Mr Arms, given his area largely deals with that subject.
Thank you, Mr Wood. Mr Arms.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, yes, the CEO's straight down the line. Part of it also is the existing infrastructure and where that's located, as well as principles around safety and best practice open space design. It's not always easy to put it in exactly the right place because of those sometimes conflicting areas. So I think it's about considering all of those and engaging the public and giving them an opportunity to contribute to that. Use our best practice and our experience, what other councils are doing, what's worked and what hasn't, and put that all into a detailed report back to you to enable you to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Mr Arms. Nothing further, Mr Wood?
No, I'll probably just add, just on top of it, so it effectively at the moment is a case by case. So with the broad range of toilets we have, staff apply different methodologies. Something that is intensively used as Victoria Park with, lots of stakeholders, if you can have stakeholders around a toilet. Lots of uses in the park and a variety of uses. It's catering for sometimes events, sometimes for high use around parks, that we do a deeper dive in community engagement, as it were. So I think there's a little bit of case by case. An isolated rural reserve, you would not necessarily go to that level of detail. You'd be pretty simple.
Thank you, Mr Wood. Councillor Mann, do you wish to continue?
Another question, please. So based on the assumption of something safer than something else, or better servicing or whatever, is there any data around, or any research that shows one particular style of toilet is going to be safer because of this reason? Or again, I'm getting back to the opinion and the choices thing here. So just wondering, do we reflect on any data or any information when we're making these choices? Certainly the noise that you get back is they're referred to as pedo toilets and all this type of thing, which I think is really poor. But just understanding, is that someone's opinion, or is there actually data to back that up?
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Mr Wood.
Yeah, so certainly we would rely on actual statistics in our reserves and facilities. We've really only had, in my experience, and this I guess goes back to overseeing open space as a former role with council, Dubbo City Council, Parks and Land Care Director. There was only, we would take account of specific examples of safety, so reportable and what we've been known through our customer request system. In that regard, really, it's more the location and some of the infrastructure you have to put in place. Sandy Beach was probably the problematic location for a variety of reasons back in the day. Technology seems to have given people different choices about what they want to do in that regard. So it is something we take note of, and it is something staff consider for particular locations. And then as technology changes, you learn. And so I'll talk about, as councillors know, some of the all abilities toilets and adult changing that we've installed for very good reasons to fix a gap in provision for our community, but they've been highly susceptible to vandalism. So in fact, they're not available. So even as you go, you learn about various locations and various technologies. So technology is getting better. People are trying to design more vandal resistant amenities as well. So that's all part of the mix. And staff do have professional networks and have conferences about open space managers as well. So we're bringing the latest thinking from a technical lens into data, so crime data, complaints data as well, and then of course the community feedback. Long way of answering your question, I think, but hopefully I got there.
Can I just pick up on one more point that Councillor Mann said, the term that Councillor Mann used there? Have we had any reports from the police about that type of activity in any of our toilets?
No.
In any of your history and back in the old director days through till now?
In terms of child abuse, no. We've had male sex workers setting up a presence at Sandy Beach, for example, so that's very different, consenting adults and what have you. So that's back in the day. It hasn't been like that for a while, and we did have to change the internal fit-outs to make it more resilient to what people are trying to do down there. That's the only instances I'm aware of that type of behaviour. I might throw to Mr. Arms if he's aware of anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Arms.
No, but Sandy Beach is an interesting location. It's isolated, popular, and it's an older style. All those things that the CEO talked about in considerations about building and locating and designing a new facility are all things that we would take into account. And so there is no one rule of thumb as opposed to accessing from the outside to individual cubicles versus entry through a point to access multiple cubicles, as it were. Both of those are still being constructed now. It really depends on what we want as a council, what the community wants, what the location demands, what the community wants from that location, how it fits into that environment, what services are there, those types of things. It really is a case-by-case basis. There's plenty of work in this space. The CEO touched on the Parks and Land Care networks that exist. They are all dealing with this, so that there's no shortage of information there available for us to help us make the right call and give you the information you need to make that call.
And just to be clear, Mr. Wood and Mr. Arms, so no incidents of, again, if you're talking about a style of toilet that encourages pedophiles, there's no recorded incidents of that, and no recommendations from any level of government or policing to say don't have a open style toilet because that encourages pedophile activity.
No, nothing is of that nature is coming to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Yep.
So just, I guess what I started with was a lot of the hysteria around this is people's opinions. I don't think it's driven by data by the sound of this. It sounds like we make a live choice every time we decide to build a toilet block. Depends where it is, what it looks like, what the functionality is, the current standards that are applicable, and the building codes, etc. So I think if you get 90 people respond to a toilet block in a Victoria Park, they obviously have real interest in it, but that's, to me, the most genuine way of finding out what people are looking for is to ask them and get them to get involved. So I'm not sure another policy is going to really change that. So I'll vote against this at this stage, same as I did a few months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Further discussion or debate, councillors? No. Okay, Councillor Black, right of reply. Again, as I've said to the other councillors, just make sure it's about things that are said in the debate. Thank you.
Heaps to say. Peter Dutton, there was a quote recently on Peter Dutton said that as a police, or a few years ago, but it was printed again recently, that he won't let it, as a former police officer, won't let his kids use public toilets due to a whole range of safety factors when his kids were a bit younger. Sydney City Council did a survey, I think it was Sydney City, did a survey of people with what style of toilet layout they preferred, and for women, overwhelmingly, it was single individual cubicles that open to the outside. One thing we've seen with the 3D toilet, since it was mentioned, it fails the safety by environmental design principles there. Councillor Ivey mentioned about the cost, more expensive to have single individual cubicles. Well, no, it's not. Narrabri, $320,000 for the single individual cubicles. Same money as what we paid over here for the 3D printed toilet. Nyngan, $128,000 for I think they got 8 single individual toilets there at their showground footy stadium. There was flat pack out of Queensland, erected by a local builder, plumber and Sparky. But ultimately, I think that this is best practice. Other councils manage to do this. I don't see why Dubbo can't do it. Other councils in New South Wales. I note the snide remarks from Councillor Wright regarding a state government MP previously, but they aren't correct at all. Other councils manage it. Dubbo should be able to do it. It'd be a good policy for the DRC area, and we wouldn't see things like Cameron Park not have enough toilets. There'd be a whole overarching policy there that says, right, we need this many toilets, work it all out. As for the waste of staff time, well, let's look no further. You want to talk about waste of staff time, the renaming of Tracker Riley section off. We'll deal with that next month, but yeah, we can do better. We should be able to do better and get it right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. We've got the notice of motion there from Councillor Black. I'll put that now. All those in favour? Against? Declare that lost. Thank you, councillors. The next item, CCL 24/170, reporting on council expenses. Councillor Black.
Thank you. The notice of motion reads in this way. 1. In the interests of full transparency of expenditure of ratepayers' funds, that a monthly report be provided detailing councillor expenses that are ultimately attributable to council/ratepayers, and that these expenses are individually reported monthly in the business papers, along with the reason or purpose for the expenditure/itemised account, which includes the following: A. Accommodation. B. Flights. C. Car kilometres claimed, both within the LGA and outside of the LGA. D. Taxi or Uber costs. E. Costs of councillors attending conferences or congresses or similar, including conference dinners and other expenditure charged. F. All costs associated with activities as part of any associations, committees or similar that council is a member of. G. Meal allowances. 2. That the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report for the August ordinary meeting of council detailing the above spending during this council term, and then monthly thereafter.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Have someone second that, please. Councillor Wells. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just very briefly, thank you, Councillor Wells. Look, this is very uncontroversial. It's all to do with transparency of use of ratepayer funds. State and federal politicians all have to publicly report and detail all of their individual spending on things, and it's not a witch hunt. You can get all this under freedom of information anyway, I'd imagine, if someone wanted it, but it should just be a given that we detail how we're spending the ratepayer funds on all the things I mentioned: accommodation, flights, travel costs, going to conferences, etc. And it's fairly self-explanatory that we should be fully transparent, and it's not all about reducing allowances or saying that we're spending too much or any of those things, but it really would give the public confidence that their funds are being spent in a transparent way, but also in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So have we got that moved and Councillor Black spoken to it? Any discussion or debate, councillors? No, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious if, and again, I would need to be guided, for the motion to go ahead but without point 2, I understand that you know, in all the August meetings coming up sooner rather than later, and that would be quite a bit of work. I actually like the idea. I think it's a reasonable idea to seek for transparency costs of councillors. I don't see a problem with that. I know it's reported annually, but I don't see a problem with it if we've got a system going that the council staff can report on it monthly going forward. I think that's reasonable, but I think between now and the August meeting might be a bit difficult. I'm not quite. That's a question, so I'm not quite sure. Thank you.
So, was there a question there, Councillor Wells, in relation to point 2? Were you asking if you wanted to remove that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel I'd be really happy to support it without point 2 in, so that we're not pushing for the August one, but looking to prepare for future. Thank you.
So if you wish to, Councillor Wells, you could move an amendment and you could do one of two things with that amendment. You could change the August timeframe to a later timeframe, for example, or you could remove point 2 altogether, so that you could make an amendment to remove that or change the timeframe on that if you wished. And then we'd debate the amendment, and then that would become part of the motion and move on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to move either way. Happy to just remove point 2 altogether, or just to move it to a later time, whichever way is easier. Be guided. Thank you.
Well, either way would satisfy what you're after. So you make a decision, I suppose, and just decide whether you'd like to move an amendment to do one or the other, but decide that and then move on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose to remove point 2. Thank you.
I've got an amendment from Councillor Wells to remove point 2. Can I have someone second that, please? Councillor Mann. Councillor Wells, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really in relation to, I think that transparency has been a real common theme that we've talked about for 2 point something years whilst we've been here. There's no issues. If there are no concerns, then there's nothing highlighted. I just think the transparency is really helpful for the community to see it, whether it's monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly. An annual report's probably not enough, and I do know that people say, well, you should read it. Not everybody reads the annual report, but some people do scroll through the monthly stuff. So, yes, so that's my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Other discussion or debate? Now, remember, this is only on the amendment, so this is only on point 2, not on the overall motion. Councillor Goff. Right? Did you? I thought your hand went up. Sorry.
About the overall, I would just wanted some clarification whether this report was for the past term of councillors, or is this setting a precedent to move forward?
So at the moment, all we're debating is point 2, the removal of point 2. So then once we deal with that,
okay,
I suppose that'd be a more appropriate question to ask about the overall motion. So discussion or debate on point 2 in terms of the removal from Councillor Wells. No discussion or debate. Councillor Black, you have a right of reply on the amendment.
Oh, thank you. Nothing much to say, really, just that if there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about. No one is suggesting that there's anything to hide. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the amendment, which effectively removes point 2 from the motion. Moved by Councillor Wells. All those in favour of the amendment? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, so now the motion is just point 1, so we can return to debate on the motion. And I've got no one that's spoken yet on that. So, Councillor Goff, if you want to ask the question now, would probably be the appropriate time.
Sorry, yes. So I'm just wanting some clarification. Is this something we can set for the new council coming in and we can move forward and see what happens that way? Or is this asking for a report for previous councillors? Because I feel like a lot of us have gone to a lot of conferences and some of us haven't gone to any. Some of us have had extra training and some of us haven't had any. I personally, if you've done extra training, hope you get back in so the community can get bang for their buck. And then they'll ask those councillors if they've gone to conferences, what did you get out of them and what did you bring back to your community? Because I know I've gained a lot of going to conferences, but I would just like some clarification of what the aim of this report is.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. I'll go to the move of the motion to clarify that, if you like, now that point 2 is removed, and to see what the intent, I suppose, is. Councillor Black?
Thank you. Well, that's a bit of a moot point now that point 2 has been removed, but going forward, it's basically just transparency for the community so they can see how their ratepayer dollars are being spent, because we've heard from the Mayor numerous times over the last few years about how he treats ratepayer dollars with or greater care than he's spending his own dollars, etc., and this all really feeds into that. That's sort of where a bit of this idea came out of, actually, listening to the Mayor on this issue of spending ratepayer dollars. So I think the community has a right to know where their money is being spent, and it's to assure them that it is being spent very wisely by councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So I'd interpret that, and I'm happy if the CEO wants to add anything to that, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would have interpreted number 1 as moving forward. The looking past was number 2, and I would call out that it would have been very difficult because we have a truncated gap between council meetings now because of the caretaker period, and with over looking backward so far, it would have been very difficult to meet that deadline. So what that means, we don't have the system and database. There's separate data points. Should this be resolved, so then we'll be able to set up a way of collecting the data up front in a database, and then it will be easy, therefore, to manage the data and bring a monthly report as per the motion in front of councillors now. But looking forward to the short answer.
And looking forward, I'm happy to take this question to Councillor Black or yourself, looking forward as in the next council term or as in trying to start, which effectively is the same thing, but going forward to the next council term. Is that the sort of process there? And I'm looking at either Councillor Black or Mr. Wood there. Is that what we're talking about?
I would see it looking forward. Again, we won't have a 4 months data, so it has to be in the next term just because we're bumping up in a caretaker. There's no reports going up like this. So what that means is that as a new council starts, we will incorporate this into the policy that they therefore adopt in terms of expenses, but we will build the data during this, which is quite convenient, really. We can build the systems in place ready to rock and roll from the first meeting in the new term once council is appointed somewhere around the 3rd of October.
Thank you. And you'll concur with that, Councillor Black? Okay, thank you. So further discussion or debate? I've only got Councillor Goff that's spoken in the debate so far. Discussion or debate? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. There's actually a policy on the council website, payment of expenses and provision of facilities, and any member of the public can Google that on the DRC website. It's all publicly available, and that's a pretty extensive policy that governs everything from enrolment fees, training, conferences, travel, accommodation, whatever it might be. That's also a policy that we want to deal with this issue of transparency that Councillor Black refers to here, and that the council and that the community certainly craves, and rightly so. But this is a policy that was adopted in the September 2022 Ordinary Council meeting, and prior to that, but actually from the 2nd of August 22 to the 29th of August, that particular policy went on public exhibition. So prior to that, it went to a council meeting to recommend that it go to public consultation or public exhibition. So it's been in the council papers at least 3 times over a period of a couple of months, and for a whole month for the public to make some comments. And it sets some limits in place. And again, it's pretty clear in that document what those limits are. And it's funny, like I understand that the community are very keen to understand where their money goes. And again, there's some limits set. So that they're well and truly aware of how much can be spent. But there wasn't a public submission received for the whole month that document was out in public, and which tends to, for me to believe that, well, maybe they're not interested in it, or maybe they overlooked it, or I'm not sure why not, or maybe they're not interested in it as in a general public perspective as what we think they might be. But either way, there's a clear policy there, and the public can be very confident. I would assume, actually, before I make that comment, I'll ask a question, maybe Mr. Mayor, through you. There are some limits in place. Maybe can you just explain to me what would happen if a councillor were to exceed those limits, or if they were approaching exceeding those limits, like what would the process actually be? I'm assuming it involves some staff and some notifications or emails or whatever it might be. Maybe you can just explain that if you can.
Yeah, sure thing. Sorry, Councillor Goff, can you just hit your red button too, please? There, thank you. Certainly happy to go through to Ms Rouse, who would obviously be in charge of that, but because we've got a policy setting, our staff are fantastic at making sure they follow the policy settings of council laws that we set, whether they agree with them or not, they'll follow them through. So I would imagine that if there was a reimbursement that went over the limit, then the staff would say, no, we're not going to reimburse that. If you feel strong enough about it, take it to a council meeting to get councillors, because a staff member can't just make a decision on their own to say, we'll just randomly pay that amount, even though it's outside policy. Staff have got to stick to policy. And if it was payment for something before, as in not a reimbursement, for example, again, the staff would be very clear to say, you can't go and book that conference or book those flights because you'd go over the level of that. Happy to go to you, Mr Wood, if you want to add any further to that.
No, effective staff are proactive in terms of the governance team under Ms Rouse to advise if your council or individual is pushing up against a threshold. So we do have the money quantum data that's readily available. And then if councillors seek payment of expenses outside of policy, be that for the purpose or for the quantum, then it won't be approved for payment, is the short answer. Ms Rouse, I don't know if, through Mr Mayor, if Ms Rouse want to add any further.
Ms Rouse?
That's correct, Mr Chair. And we also have things in place where if someone or a total amount is approaching the limit as listed within the policy, that we have checks and balances in place, and that we will advise that person in writing or through the CEO if they're approaching the limit and we need to do X, Y, Z, or noting that X amount of months are left in the year, if they're likely to exceed it, that we need to advise them or go through avenues to bring it back to council.
Thank you. And I suppose that's the important point that Ms Rouse makes there, Councillor Wright. If there was some reason that it had to go outside the policy, then the staff would need to advise the councillor in question that it would need to come back to a full meeting of council to approve that expenditure. So further, Councillor Wright?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So I guess just following that, you know, we're really looking at a motion here that, you know, and again, I'm all for transparency here. We know what those limits are and what the process is if councillors were to exceed those openly publicised limits that the public had an opportunity to make comment on. But I see this, you know, if we're talking about individually reporting councillors, I see a couple of my fellow councillors here that spend a lot of time on the road between here and Wellington, who would no doubt spend more money on travel than the other 8 councillors in the room here. And there's probably other couple of councillors who will spend a bit more money on training, or maybe they've attended conferences. And really, I see this as nothing but a way to maybe embarrass, ridicule, single out councillors who might have spent more than another, even though it was within a written policy. And all they've done is really claimed what they're entitled to within a policy, which this council has voted on, mind you. Have all put our hand up and voted on it, and as a whole. So it's also monitored by several governance staff. So I just don't see it as anything else other than, you know, I know Councillor Black mentioned witch hunt. Maybe it's not a witch hunt. Maybe it is. I don't know. But nevertheless, an annual process whereby it is clearly in the papers each year to say what the councillors have spent as a whole is all I believe is what's needed based on all the governance and the processes that are all in place. So.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further questions or debate, councillors? No, and I think I actually just pulled up the annual report, Councillor Wright, because you did mention that there. So the annual report does show it's got 9 categories there, and the state government does list fairly clearly what the categories we must report on, and our staff, again, do the right thing by there. There's expenses, apart from the incredible high wages that we're all paid for councillors, the expenses associated in this report approximate to about $37,000. Just doing a quick sum in my head there. So you're talking about a monthly report that might be $3,000. We've got a $180 million budget. We probably should be focusing on how we can do the best thing with that. Focusing on $3,000 in a monthly report seems like, again, I suppose you said it there, maybe a bit of a witch hunt for councillors, so it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Any other discussion or debate, councillors, before I go back to Councillor Black? Being none, Councillor Black, right of reply again on what was said in this debate.
Thank you. This isn't anything to do with a witch hunt, because I explained that before and explained what it was about. So saying it's anything to do with a witch hunt is just not on as far as I'm concerned. It's nothing to do with embarrassing or ridiculing or single out singling out other councillors based on their travel. Everyone knows that councillors from Wellington would drive a lot more Ks and rightfully claim that as travel up here. So that's offensive. It'll be good policy. Other councils do it. We really do need to be as transparent and accountable to the community and their hard-earned ratepayer dollars that they pay as we can be. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. And really, yeah, you can have a look at what a whole quantum of councillors spent once a year, but like I said before, state and federal police report their travel and expenses and accommodation and flights, etc., etc. So I just see no reason why we wouldn't do the same and get maximum transparency and accountability. And then if people are saying, oh, you're just travelling everywhere, you say, well, look, no, I'm not actually. Went here, went there, and I say, all right, it's all on proper council business. No problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So I have this there. Remember, we've got the motion there from Councillor Black. Got that now. Put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that lost. Okay, thank you, councillors. Next item, CCL 24/171 River Street West, proposed registration of road corridor. Have someone move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor Wright. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Mann?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/172 draft planning agreement, Maryvale Solar Farm. Councillor Ivey, you wish to move that? Or, sorry, you have an alternative motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to foreshadow an alternative motion.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ivey, don't foreshadow. There's no motion at the moment. You can move that motion if you wish.
I would like to move an alternative motion, please. And that reads that a draft planning agreement be prepared in accordance with the 1.5% of CIV, capital investment value, outlined in the Renewable Energy Benefit Framework. 2, that a further report be presented to Council for consideration, including the terms of the draft planning agreement and allocation of funding.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Have someone second that, please? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Ivey, just to speak to your motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd start out by acknowledging the great work that staff have done in working in the renewable sector, and I think that some of the results that staff have achieved have been really, really terrific. And I think we, as an LGA and a community within that LGA, should acknowledge the work that staff have done. But I just feel in this case with the Maryvale Solar that the VPA, the draft VPA which has been proposed, is not advantageous enough for the local community. It, as it stands, provides a capital funds contributed to the community equal to or equivalent of 0.73% of the capital investment value. Now, in previous council meetings, this council has passed a motion that we will seek a capital investment value contribution equivalent to 1.5% that would then flow to the community as a community benefit fund. This, in fact, as I say, at 0.73 is less than half that. And I just think that that really, as per some of the previous solar farm developments in the Wellington area, that the community is being shortchanged. I think that really I think the proponents shouldn't underestimate the amount of opposition in the community to some of these developments. Not just that, it's not just an in-principle opposition. It's saying, look, what is the economic value of this development to our community? And I think that we as a council have an obligation to go back to the proponent and say, look, we think that that figure that's being offered isn't satisfactory. We've got other renewable energy projects, particularly within wind farming, where there is considerably more community funding flowing from that development. than is flowing from the solar farm developments. And I think that's wrong, because I think arguably some of the solar farm development have much more effect on the community than do some of the wind farm developments. We've got a proposal for a wind farm at the southern area, southern end of our LGA, which have a VPA there has been negotiated, which is actually providing 1.96% of the capital investment value to flow to the community as a community benefit fund. So if we take that with a wind farm, which, as I say, arguably has less effect on the community than a solar farm, the proponent agreeing to offer 1.96% of CIV compared to 0.73% in this case. This solar farm is in a very good agricultural area. It's agricultural land value, prime agricultural land. I don't begrudge the owners of the land at all the opportunity for them to develop a solar farm on their property. That's perfectly within their right, and good luck to them. But I think in doing it, it's just wrong that the proponent only has to contribute 0.73% of the capital investment value to the community. 73 cents in every $100 that they spend, I believe, is just not enough funds to flow from the proponent to benefit the local community. So that's why I would ask that my fellow councillors support this motion, that we go back to that a draft planning agreement be prepared in accordance with a 1.5% of capital investment value. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Black.
Thank you. Can I get just a question, please, some advice? So we go back to the proponents and we say, we want you to pay 1.5%, and they just say, no, now we're not going to pay anything. Is that a potential outcome of this? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Black. Mr. Wood.
That's certainly a risk. To date, solar farms, and I'll throw to Mr. Wallace shortly, but this is an old approval, 2019 approval, which a modified DA. Previously, and we're well aware of the major solar farm projects in Wellington area thus far that have contributed nothing in terms of VPA, so it would be consistent with our previous experience that solar farms pay nothing. So this, to Councillor Ivey's point, staff have done a good job renegotiating an old planning approval. So I might throw to Mr. Wallace in terms of any other comments in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Wallace.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, anything's possible. I haven't been involved in the negotiations to date, so I don't really have a measure on how they'll react. I would think it would be unlikely that they would walk away and effectively do a dummy spit. They may, an alternative may be that they reiterate their current offer. That might be their position instead. But I am surmising. I really haven't been involved in the negotiations. The staff have been battling pretty hard to get it to where it is. It wasn't an easy negotiation to get it to that point, and they may have different views about getting it higher to 1.5%. So that is an unknown.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Further, Mr. Wood?
And just to reiterate that this is a voluntary planning agreement process, has to be by agreement, so there is no compulsion for a planning agreement. As we've spoken about many times, there is no trigger. For newer project, there is direction from planning to sort of strongly encourage to enter agreements, but they are for projects going through the planning approval process right now, and the government is imminent in releasing guidelines in that regard as well. But there is nothing, and particularly that there was nothing when this was first approved in terms of compulsion.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Councillor Black, further?
Just a quick comment. Look, people over at Mudgee Way have said to me about how is it Resources for Regions funding or something like that. Anyway, the coal mines pretty much just fix the roads that go out to their coal mines, and that seems to be Maryvale Road, spending all that over $1 million on it. It's like, doesn't look like it'd get that much use. It'd be good for a couple of houses along there, but I don't know if it'd be the greatest use of this money from the solar farm. And I understand what Councillor Ivey was saying there about bearing the brunt of renewable resources, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, people have agreed to lease or sell their farms to these renewable energy companies and are cashing in big time on it. So I suppose if people are going to be annoyed, you probably want to look a bit closer to home and talk to their neighbours or community members who are, some would say, selling out to renewable energy companies and foisting those upon. But renewable energy companies do need to do better in the communities, and often those solar panels don't look very good at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Further discussion or debate, councillors? No. Councillor Ivey, do you have a right of reply to anything that Councillor Black said?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, picking up on Councillor Black's comment, I agree that the landowner the landowners do very well out of the renewable energy development, and good luck to them. That's fine. My beef is the fact that in the government planning protocol, that they haven't recognised that it is not only the landowners that should be compensated by getting good money for their land or the use of their land, it should be the community that is also receiving some benefits, because the community does, the nature of the community does change with the development and the construction and the implementation and the use of renewable energy infrastructure, and so my beef is that that the community is being shortchanged or has been shortchanged. I think it's changing. You know, there is a move afoot to redress that. But as I think the CEO said, I think some of the early solar farms were established under the radar. That we are trying to reverse that. We've writing to some of those the proponents of those earlier developments, asking that although there's no legal obligation for them to do it, will they do at least provide a community service and a community benefit, and recognise that their development has had an effect on the community, and some money should be paid accordingly. So this is really just an extension of that. Yes, there is money being paid at present, or being agreed to be paid, but I'm just saying that I think from a community point of view, it's not enough. If indeed, I'd be interested to know what the outcome would be if the proponent did just walk away and say, no, we're not going to pay anything, you know, it's that or nothing, and no, we won't pay anything. I'd like to be part of that public debate about that, because I think the proponent would come off second best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Have that before us now, councillors. I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, now, councillors, I might just do something a bit unusual. I might just ask for a mover. I just feel for Mr. Crowfoot still sitting in the audience there. I know he's enthralled by the meeting, but we've still got a few items to go before we get to the Macquarie Homestay. So if I could have a councillor just move that we bring that forward in the agenda to deal with CCL 24/176 now, which is a bit ahead. Thank you, Councillor Etheridge, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Any discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Yes, after it's moved, yes. So we'll deal with that one now, councillors, and then I'll go back to 173 next. So CCL 24/176, request for interest-free loan, Macquarie Homestay. Can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Wells. Before you speak to that, Councillor Chowdhury, Ms Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a significant non-pecuniary interest in this CCL 24/176, being that I'm a board member of Macquarie Homestay, and I will leave.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. You've moved that. You wish to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to firstly thank you, Mr. Crowfoot came tonight and give it insight. And we all know that Macquarie Homestay, how they helping our rural communities, not only Davao, surrounding this area. And I will fully support on this motion, because this is very critical, services they're giving. And I would really like to thank Mr. Crowfoot and his staff, leading these services through this community, helping the people having some health issues and taking some advantage through this Macquarie Homestay. So I'm gonna put my 100% support for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to Councillor Chowdhury, I would definitely support this motion for the same reasons. But knowing that this region has been supporting birthing for many, many years, we haven't been able to birth past Dubbo for a long time, meaning that some, expecting mums need to come into Dubbo weeks and weeks beforehand, and if they're experiencing any problems. And there are obviously, with the cancer services here, people coming to Dubbo rather than going on to Orange. And to hear Mr. Crawford speak about the other opportunities to 50 units in the future is really exciting to hear. I know this particular grant is to get some administration services, but it is freeing up a family room. So again, a really good purpose. So wherever we can do things like this to support the wider part of Western New South Wales, I think it's a really good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Black, sorry, and then Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do thank Mr. Crowfoot for coming along tonight, and also for his letter to council and his advocacy in this area. I'm a big fan of Macquarie Homestay, and what they do is great, but it's really not our core business as council to be providing ratepayer funds to the tune of $11,000 here for what is essentially should be provided by state and federal government. Just another cost shift. Now council would be responsible for healthcare. It's a very worthy project, but I'm just not convinced that ratepayer dollars should be the ones that are helping to fund what should be a provision of an essential service in a health facility. The state and feds should be putting this money in. Simple as that. And they should have done it years ago. And that's pretty much where I am. And another major factor is that it's not on Crown land. Often when council provides interest-free loans, it's for volunteer-run organisations, sporting groups and those sort of things that are on Crown land, whereas this isn't. So is my advice. So I know that a lot of the community have put in a lot of fundraising efforts over the years. I know the Mayor's efforts in fundraising extensively. But we didn't provide funding for the Dubbo Turf Club for their flashing lights. And I just see this as just yet another cost shift from state and federal governments that aren't providing the service required onto council. And it really, where will it end? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. And then Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this. Look, we're well aware of the community's concern regarding, short-term and emergency and crisis accommodation, and the pressure that that's been put on the community to come up with solutions for this. Certainly, Macquarie Homestay play a huge part in reducing that pressure on accommodation in the area by providing this type of accommodation. Certainly, if that accommodation wasn't available, the people who are staying in Macquarie Homestay have got to stay somewhere else, and that's taking up more short-term accommodation, hotel accommodation, whatever it might be. So certainly, Macquarie Homestay do their part in alleviating a bit of that pressure. The community constantly asking, what is council doing with respect to helping with regards to accommodation? And this report tells me that for council to forego $100,000 over a 5-year interest-free loan, costing ratepayers about $2,200 a year for the next 5 years. So about $11,000 overall cost is a pretty small cost to pay to provide 2 more rooms, which are going to provide that accommodation for people in need. And again, it's a way of council contributing to, albeit a small measure, reducing some of that pressure on short-term accommodation.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question. The $11,000 that this is going to cost, wouldn't that be part of the amount that they would pay back? So it's not a cost to council anyway?
No, interest-free.
The basic concept there, Councillor Burns, is it would be an interest-free loan. So that would be money we would forego if we didn't have that money in one of our investments.
Okay, thank you.
So
the question.
The outright cost would be approximately $11,000. Further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey, sorry.
I will support the motion. I think it's, as has been said, the service which is provided by Macquarie Homestay is fantastic. Okay, look, it doesn't probably really affect too many people or benefit so many people within our LGA, but as we know, Dubbo and hopefully the broader LGA is a focal point to Western New South Wales, and therefore by encouraging and helping Macquarie Homestay, we are providing that service to that further western area, which is to be commended. The only question I might ask is that it's completely unsecured, as I understand it. Well, firstly, is that right? Are there any security attached to it? Yeah, if not, is that an issue?
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. I'll go through Mr Wood to Ms Bassingthwaighte.
No, it's not secured. I did request their audited financial statements and had a review. They got the ability to pay, in talking with Macquarie Homestay, this will free up 2 rooms, which will generate more income than the repayments annually.
Thank you, Ms Bassingthwaighte. Councillor Ivey.
Just a follow-up question on that. So yes, the audited financial statements are available and will be provided through the period of that interest-free loan. Is that to be understood?
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Through Mr Wood to Ms Bassingthwaighte.
Their financial statements are found on their website.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ivey.
That satisfies me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wells, you can ask a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm just really curious about the time frame to have the, it looks like a demount, I'm not quite sure of the style, but how long will it be until the building is ready?
Not sure if you've got the information. Mr Wood, Ms Bassingthwaighte? As soon as possible. That help? Discussion or debate, councillors. Councillor Wright, you wish to ask a question?
Thank you. I know I've already said I'd support this, but probably addressing one of the comments that Councillor Ivey had. Do we have any data on the economic benefit that maybe 2 additional rooms would provide to the Dubbo community, or what Macquarie Homestay provides economically to the Dubbo community? Would imagine there'll be 2 extra people staying in this room every day for 52 weeks of the year. I would imagine would provide some form of economic contribution back to the community, partially offsetting the cost to ratepayers for this particular contribution.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Mr Wood?
I'm aware of analysis and talking previously to Macquarie Homestay about the economic impact of having the service based in Dubbo, and let alone the social service it provides to Western New South Wales, but don't have that detail, and neither does Ms Bassingthwaighte at this point in time. We can take that on notice and get that out of session to councillors.
Sorry, thank you, Mr Wood. Nothing further, Councillor Wright. Any further questions? Councillor Black, you've got a question?
Yeah, I do. It says in the papers here that on the meeting held on the 30th of April 2024 with the board chair of Macquarie Homestay, the mayor, CEO and director organisational performance, I'm just wondering, what was the role of the mayor at that meeting? Seems a bit operational to me. Thanks.
No. No, I'm not sure what you want the answer. People meet with the mayor all the time about a whole range of different issues. There was a request to meet with myself and the CEO in relation to applying for an interest-free loan. So the role of the mayor is to sit there and listen to the community residents and see how the council can help. Not sure if you want to add anything, Mr Wood?
No, that was going to be my point. That was part of the original request for a meeting. So to meet with the mayor and myself, and Jane was the key operational part, if you will, to understand what was going to be requested.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Black?
Yes, thank you. To our knowledge, has there been any approaches to fund this specific $150,000 or whatever it is to state or federal government or philanthropic organisations, or is council the first port of call? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Black. Mr Wood.
Yeah, yes, I'm very aware that they're going for grants all the time, and there was a grant program that then was not gone for. So my understanding and in discussions with Mr Crowfoot that they are very active in the space of both fundraising externally to government, so other sectors, private sector and what have you, and donations, as well as targeting grant funding as well. So very aware that they're on the hunt. This is to get across an initial issue, to give some certainty, to move that and free up some rooms. With that certainty we can provide, as opposed to going for grants and continually seeking external funding.
Thank you, Mr Wood. Further, Councillor Black? Okay, any other discussion or debate, councillors? No. Councillor Chowdhury, you have a right of reply to anything said during the debate.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to highlight one thing. Like, I know, like, I follow Macquarie Homestead Facebook, and I keep look for, like, they always get some sort of grant from state and federal government. So I will wish my fellow councillors will lobby hard with the state and federal government to make sure they give more grant to the Macquarie Homestead. And also, like, as Mr. Crowfoot has mentioned during his speech, like, they have to 6 people in a day. They could not accommodate them. They're rejecting their request. So I think the council is, from their side, they're just doing a bit helping. I think it's a great gesture, and I think my fellow councillor will support this motion, and hopefully Macquarie Homestead can helping more people in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Have the motion before us now. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, thank you, councillors, for moving that one forward. We'll go back now to CCL 24/173, name of thoroughfares associated with Daisy Hill Estate Master Plan. Have someone move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Etheridge, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Etheridge, wish to speak to that? Any discussion or debate, councillors? Being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/174, Belgravia Aquatic Leisure Centre, pool fees and charges. Have someone move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I see that 9% or overall average on 9% increase is probably in line with the increase to council's current fees and charges. I can see there's some comparisons there with a couple of other pools around the area, being Parks and Bathurst. It looks similarly priced, if not even a little bit lower on some of our costs, including the season passes. So look, I'm happy to support this. Look, I'm also pretty keen to see how the next season rolls through, having with Belgravia now having a full staff complement, fully trained, and a full season to prove their ability to manage this particular facility or these facilities. So I'm sure the community is just as keen to see that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any other discussion? Councillor Black.
Thank you.
Councillor Ivey after Black, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to vote against this because it's above inflation, and from comments that the community have made to me, I don't feel like they feel that they got value for money and a decent service last year from Belgravia. That seems to be the general feeling out there in the community, as told to me and seen on the Facebook and other places like that. So I think people in the community might question this and say, well, they can get their act together first and then we'll pay them. They get enough anyway. So I'll vote against this because I think that Belgravia probably should get their act together first, and then we can put the prices up once they're delivering the service at a really, really good level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Ivey.
Just a question, Mr Mayor. I noticed the season passes for Dubbo Aquatic Leisure Centre and the Wellington Aquatic Leisure Centre are set there. Just to check, does a pass to one of the aquatic centres provide access to the other one? In other words, can it be either or?
Thank you, Mr Wood. Through you to Mr. Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Through you, Mr Wood, to Mr Arms.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it's my understanding that that's the case. It's one single pass. The fees and charges structure reflects largely the previous operation by Dubbo Regional Council, and so that was the case then. I think it flows over to current.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Arms, Councillor Ivey, nothing further? Okay, thank you. Councillor Showery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll echo with Councillor Black. I'm going to vote against this one because last season was really not really good look, and I would like to see they improve their game and then charge the community extra 9%. Otherwise, I think we'll cop up more criticism. So I will vote against this one. Yeah.
I'm just got a question here, a technical question in terms of voting against it. I'm just not sure what happens if we defeat this motion, and I'm just going to ask someone to tell me what might happen if we defeat this, because at the moment it says that we note the average fee increase is 9%, so that's notation, so nothing dramatic there. We note that it responds to increased industry, but the third point, council approved the proposed fees and charges associated with aquatic leisure centres. So if we say no to this, presumably we don't approve that, and then I'm not sure what fees and charges they could charge. In fact, if there's no approval for fees and charges. So I don't know whether that's the case. So in other words, maybe councillors that aren't happy with these might be better amending it rather than trying to defeat it, because does it just mean they go back to last year's fees, or does it mean there are no fees and charges approved by council because there's no resolution to say that? So, Mr. Wood, sorry to throw a curly one at you.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You need to adopt a fee structure. So, and whether you point backwards, I think the key thing about the increased cost, which is why, generally speaking, council services targeted 10% increase, is because materials such as inputs into pools like chemicals and what have you have increased substantially more. So any of those types of things have actually gone up in tens of percent. So that is working with Belgravia, the staff, to come to that agreeable amount, because it is slightly under the mantra we gave our staff for looking for that 10% increase as well in the fees and charges. So to your point, we need a decision on the fees and charges to set. So should this be defeated, then we would need to move another percentage increase, for example. But I might throw to Mr. Arms. Any further comment on that basis?
Mr. Arms, you want to add something to that?
I think, yes, what the CEO has said there. Yes, it is in line with that 10% target that was put to council for our current fees and charges, and it does reflect a high cost environment that we're all living in and working through. Yeah, that's about all I would say to that.
Sure. So just for council's knowledge, so basically vote against it if you wish, but then if we did that, we'd need something, because otherwise there's no fees and charges, or amend it. But if we defeat it, we can't just leave it there, I suppose is my point there. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Showery. Further discussion, debate. Councillor Mann.
Thank you. Just a question. We pay a fixed amount per year for them to subsidise to them operate the pool. So what increase do they get on the base amount this year?
Thanks, Councillor Mann. To Mr. Wood, to you.
I'll have to get staff to quickly go through that if I could. So if I could just take that on notice, answering in this discussion, but whether I need an adjournment to give me time, or whether there's further questions to allow us time to look that up.
So, Councillor Mann, I'll just put that on hold while that's quickly investigated, if that's okay with you. And then I'll just see if there's any other discussion or debate with councillors. Otherwise, we will just do an adjournment. So any debate as well, Councillor Mann, or you just want to leave that question hanging for the moment? I'll wait. That's right. Don't worry. Well, we'll wait until we get an answer there. Any other discussion or debate, councillors, in relation to this item? Councillor Mann?
Sorry, the other question I had was the process for them to put forward 9%. Is it some sort of open book negotiation, or how does that actually roll out?
Yeah. So we'll answer that one first. So through you, Mr. Wood, to Mr. Arms.
So that was, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So they reviewed their operations last year and compared the pricing that they came into with other similar facilities. It's hard to compare different facilities. They're all different. They all have different elements to them, but there are some consistencies between them, and we've tried to show those in the report, and they give you an indicator that the price that's proposed before you is consistent with other facilities that they run. They run an enormous amount of facilities around Australia and New Zealand. Really, it was a discussion between Bill Gravier and myself, Manager Recreation Open Space, and it was included in the workshop to councillors a couple of months ago. At that stage, it was a little higher than was before you, but it's come down due to some negotiations between those positions and I. So I think the fee structure you have before you reflects the business as it sits at the moment in comparison to other similar facilities around their cohort of facilities.
Hopefully that covers that question, Councillor Mann.
I'll just clarify a little bit. So is there any, is it an open book style, or is it just a discussion, or do you get to look at numbers, or how do they justify what they're asking for, I guess?
And by open book, I assume you mean, Councillor Mann, putting their figures on the table to show their figures. Thank you, Mr. Wood. To Mr. Arms.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So they've been very open with their financials. So there's certainly no concerns there from our perspective. In terms of coming to these numbers before you, it was really a negotiation, a conversation, a meeting about what fees and charges they wanted to set and the reasons why, the justifications why, which we've included in the report. How we were particularly interested in how they compared to other similar facilities, which we've talked about, which is outlined in the report as well. And so it's that back and forth. We brought them before you a couple of months ago as part of that workshop as well to raise that, as well as the challenges they had last season, what they plan for this season, and all that really culminates in that report you have before you.
Thank you, Mr. Arms. Further on that, Councillor Mann, or I'll see how we're going with the other question. If you nothing further on that. Okay.
Going through the contract now, so if you no further questions, we'll need them.
Radio. Okay, so still working on that one, Councillor Mann. Just looking at the contract there now. Any other discussion or debate, councillors, in relation to that? What I might do then, Mr. Wood. 5-minute adjournment, enough time for you? Yeah, right. So I'll just call a 5-minute adjournment. What's the time now? 7:36, so 7:41. So for people watching online, 7:41, I'll just do a 5-minute adjournment and we'll be back online at 7:41. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. 7:41. We're back and going again. So, in answer to Councillor Mann's question, through you, Mr. Wood, to Ms. Bassingwaite.
As per the contract, they have had a payment schedule written into the contract, which has a 4% increase, so a CPI increase of 4% from year on year.
So is it a CPI or is it just a standard 4%?
It's a written contract with a negotiated amounts, and the next year is a 4% increase on their fees to us.
Yep. So we pay an additional 4%. So effectively, a CPI, if you like, increase on that. And if they generate more money or less money, that's good luck or bad luck from their perspective. We just know what we've got to pay. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Mann. So any further now, Councillor Mann, join the debate. Any further questions? Okay. Yep. Sorry. You contemplate.
Turn my microphone on to say no.
But any further discussion or debate, councillors? No. I'll go back to Councillor Wright for a right of reply on anything said in the debate.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've already said that I believe this 9% is in line with a budget that this council has adopted with regards to increase in fees and charges. One thing I will say that Belgrade, communities expressed their concern as to how this business has operated in their first term, and obviously they did it under a fair bit of stress and got through a season, albeit with a fair few bruises. But they're operating a business which is under pressure with regards to costs, just like this council does, and council has to increase our rates and fees and charges to assist with maintaining an acceptable service level. And I think here we're sort of asking Belgravia in this case to provide a better level of service, as Councillor Black suggested, and rightly so. However, with potentially less money is what we're asking. They've increased those costs, or they've had an increase of costs, but we're asking to provide something better. And I'm not sure that we can ask them to do both, and that's to not increase fees, but also provide a better level of service. And I think that's similar to what community would ask a council to do, provide us something better, but don't increase our fees. And that's about maintaining a service level or improving a service level, and I don't believe they'll be able to do that if they don't meet their current costs and give themselves that cash flow to be able to do what community are expecting them to do. So.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. We have that before us now. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, Councillor, CCL 24/175, new Crown lease for Wellington Community Children's Centre. Any discussion or, have someone move that first, please? Thank you, Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Wells. Councillor Ivey, do you wish to speak to that?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, the Wellington Preschool is an absolute institution. It provides a fantastic service to the community, and I think it established in 1960 something or other. So it's been going for 60 years. There's hardly a kid in Wellington that doesn't go there. It's always been well run, and I think it's great that council can support it with $1 a year lease payment. Yes, the plus having to pay the insurance, I think that's a cost, an impost, but really in their overall scheme of the cost of running the preschool, I think that can be absorbed. So I'll be happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Any further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wright, you've got the look that you want to say something.
It's just making sure Councillor Luck didn't have a conflict of interest for a preschool that he attended, but I just saw that when it opened, it was probably a little bit after Councillor Ivey went through there. So.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any further discussion or debate, councillors? No, I won't give you a right of reply, Councillor Ivey, to that. I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/177, authority to issue government gazette notice. Can someone move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Chowdhury, you should speak to that.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 24/178, question on notice. Move that way, Councillor Goff, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Goff, do you wish to make any comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked this question to be brought to council, because one of the most frequently asked questions I get from the community are, how many cats and dogs are we allowed in town? And I stress in town. I'm not talking about lifestyle blocks or properties or working dogs or anything like that. I'm talking about in the township of Wellington and Dubbo. We're a community of animal lovers, and I myself have a cat and a 3-legged dog. And however, we have a problem of a minority of people and a major problem with pet hoarding. And this creates a negative impact on mostly the neighbours with the noise pollution and smell. It's negative on the council staff, resources and facilities, but most importantly, it's negative on animal welfare. These animals are not getting proper care, or they're fighting for food, and most likely there's backyard breeding. So I see on other council website pages there's recommended numbers. So a lot of places are saying limit of 4 dogs, 2 cats, no roosters. But I did notice in my research, because we're into research, the Hillshire Council has a policy, the local orders policy, keeping animals. And this enforces a limit. And then if you want to exceed that limit that they've got, you have to ask for approval and then also get neighbours to give consent that they're happy with that. And this is governed under the section 128 part 8A of the Local Government Act. So I believe that this is something we should consider looking into as a future policy and be proactive about a solution.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any other discussion, councillors? I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Comments and matters of urgency. I'll start on the right. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Only a short one from me. Look, on Friday the 30th of August, I know it's a few weeks away, is the annual Vinnie Sleep Out. This will be my 3rd year, and the idea of it is to raise money for homeless people. And I guess one of we see a lot of fundraising activities around, but one of the beauty of this one is that money that's raised locally stays locally, and that's really, really important. The money that's spent on a weekly basis to provide food for people sleeping rough in this area is substantial, and look, we all see it on a day-to-day basis with people sleeping rough. There's one just near my office again who's just popped up, and they just seem to sort of frequent the CBD in varying places. So this is a fantastic charity. It's a great event. I must say it's pretty cold inside the old Dubbo jail, and you'll hear every dong of the clock tower all the way through till the time you reopen your eyes at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. whenever it might be. But it is a good group of people to organise it. It's a great way to meet a few members of the community. So if something you're interested in, jump on online with the Vinnie Sleep Out for 2024, and I'm sure you'll be able to join a couple of the other councillors. I think you're also going to join me that night. So Friday the 30th of August, come along, bring something warm.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think 2 weeks ago, nearly, Councillor Goff and I attended the Endangered Species Art Exhibition put on in Wellington by the Wellington Arts. It was fantastic. They had, I think, 60 artists exhibit. The theme of the exhibition, obviously, endangered species, and as part of that, the artists had to do a little bit of research about what the endangered species was, why it was endangered, what are the factors contributing. Some of them just wrote little stories attached to their exhibition, to their painting. I think the artists came from Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, ACT, I think, too. So the artists were really, wasn't just a local exhibition, although there obviously were local artists exhibiting. And they just had the opening. The exhibition is still on now at the centre. So if you're going to go and watch, have a look at it, it's fantastic. But I think on the opening night they had somewhere between 100 and 200 people. It was really, it was just great to get the public there mingling. It was judged by David Coote, who's from Local Land Services. He says, I basically am an absolute art philistine. I don't know anything about art. I know a fair bit about endangered species, and he was really fantastic. He just went through picked out a lot of the paintings and just talked about why he thought they were good, what sort of message they portrayed, and the winner was Michelle Simpson, who ex-Wellington but now living in Dubbo, Rossa Michelle, and he talked about her Malleefowl painting and what he thought about it, and she came up and said, you know what, he saw a lot more in that painting than I ever intended, but it was just incredible. So I just full marks to Wellington Arts for organising another fantastic event.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Councillor Goff.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to shout out that like I joined the NIDOC walk this year. It's really, I done last few years. It's really good. See the community, like all this, like people come together and show the respect and do the flag raising here. Also, the next day I have attended the citizenship ceremony in here, and it's really good to see like the people are coming to Dubbo from different countries and settling in Dubbo. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherry. Councillor Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, similar to my colleague, Councillor Chowdhury, I wanted to shout out a couple of weeks ago, NAIDOC Week. The march kicked off on the Monday, and, you know, I was really pleased to see that even in the rain, we had quite a big crowd marching down the street and coming here for the flag raising ceremony and the cutting of the cake. And then throughout the week, there was quite a number of events that occurred that were just as rich, but people kept coming to them, even though some of them, there was quite a bit of rain around. So great to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention the trip that we had to the gold mines with Mike Sutherland last week. That was a real eye opener for me, and I don't know, I just really wanted to go to it because it was somewhere that my son works. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Black.
Just two very quick items. Richard Mutton, Mr. Mutton, mentioned earlier about, in his little speech, about pools that section off half the pool and just heat that side, blah, blah, blah. He must have been listening to my comments over the last few years. I've mentioned Inverell Pool where they do that, and also Roma Pool where they've got a big cover over it and heater up. It seems to go very well, so it's good to see that that's getting a bit of traction. And also the NAIDOC Day event, I was surprised that there were so many people turned up in the rain. That was really good to see, and that the rain sort of held off a bit so we could go over into the park afterwards, and the kids doing the dancing there, that was great, and catch up with a few people that I hadn't seen for a fair while. So a very good day all in all, and the first time I've ever done the whole march in one go. Usually I've snuck down through Church Street or had to go back to work or another event, something like that, but I managed to stick it out for the whole way this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Mann.
Thank you. Just on the 9th of August, the Rotary Club of Dubbo South heads off on, I think it's the 24th year now. I could have that wrong, but it's a long time, for Destination Outback, where this year we've got around 60 cars, 150 people. We're heading out into the outback. The final destination is Coffin Bay before we turn around and come home. This event has raised almost $3 million over the last 24 years. For mainly the major recipients being the Royal Flying Doctor, but it's also designed as we go through all these small outback towns. We leave money along the way and we help them with their community projects, etc. So just a shout out to everyone going on that. If you get asked to kick in and sponsor somebody in a car, please do so, because it all goes to a great cause. The other item I thought I might just remind people, on the 5th of August at 8 a.m, the applications to become a local government councillor open. We all get lots of free advice through various channels over the period of council. Lots of people, very good advice. Some think they could do it a lot better, and I'm sure they probably can. There's some really smart people in the world. But I encourage people that if they really want to have input into their community, 5th of August, 8 a.m, they close on the 14th of August at 12 noon. So if you're thinking about putting your hand up to run for council, I suggest you get yourself organised and watch those dates. The New South Wales Electoral Commission website's very, very, very good. It's elections.newsouthwales.gov.au, give you all the information you need. Good luck to all those.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Just a few ones for me. Citizenship, mentioned already, 7 different nationalities came in this particular time. India, South Africa, Nepal, Bangladesh, Kenya, New Zealand, Pakistan. So it's just such a variety. We keep seeing such a variety of different nations that people come from. Absolutely fascinating. The program called Boots, there was a graduation ceremony during the month with Boots, which was a program to get females into the trade forces. So this one was run by Abergeldy, trying to get more females into the construction industry, specifically with their work. But there's a lot of movement there at the moment. The Department of Education was there, talking about trying to get people from non-traditional backgrounds into some of those trade-focused workforces. And so I thought that was a really well-run program and certainly encouraged people a lot to move into those. Parkrun had their 9th birthday. Congratulations to Parkrun, 9th birthday during the month. So great attendance down there, 269 on that particular day, but they averaged 260, which is well above the worldwide average of 117 at each event. So they do a great job there. Thanks to Mike Sutherland. Councillor Burns mentioned it, the Toongai and Tomingley tour out there to the rare earth minerals mine at Toongai, across to Tomingley, looked at the rehab they've done over at Peak Hill, and obviously there's potential there for a gold mine about 2/3 the size of Cadia down around the Badenga area there. So just another thing that will add to our economy if that goes ahead. And the last one, the most exciting one during the month, of course, was when the Minister Penny Sharp came out to make an announcement here in Dubbo and then down in Wellington. You all remember the $128.4 million that's been set aside from EnergyCo for forward funding for projects while EnergyCo gets up to the stage of actually injecting money into those economies on an ongoing basis. So this was the first tranche of that money. So there's $11.25 million in there for council. There's other amounts in there for First Nations businesses, for community groups. But obviously that 11.25 focused on, from our perspective, that's an exciting amount. And obviously we want to be able to do something with that that'll help grow our economy overall, in particular the Wellington economy. So busy month as always. Great to see lots of fantastic things happening, but that will be some long-term benefits from that particular money. So if I, under Section 10A of the Local Government Act, the next item, CCL 24/180, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185 and 186, have been identified as likely to be discussed in a closed session. Can I have someone move into confidential? Thanks, Councillor Chowdhury, seconded by Councillor Wright. We've had no applications of members of the public to make their representations regarding whether the meeting should be closed to the public. There's no members left in the public gallery, so I don't need to go through the next section. Any discussion or debate, councillors, on moving into confidential? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So the time being 7:58 p.m, we'll move into a closed session. The stream will now be turned off. Any members of the public will be asked to leave the chamber. The chamber will be reopened and the live stream restarted after deliberations on this matter, with the resolutions to be made public. Can we please stop web streaming? 8:11 p.m. Start stream again, please. Done. Thank you. Welcome back. Please refer to the following slides for the motions from the closed sessions of council. I'll just go to each one individually. I'll get to the first one here. Bear with me. So, we'll get back to that one. Thank you. So, the first item is CCL 24/180 Troy Gully Sewage Pump Station, as per the information on your screens. The next item, thank you, is CCL 24/181 Draft Planning Agreement, Kerrs Creek Wind Farm. The next item is CCL 24/182 Radri Tourism Centre, Engagement of Services. Next item is CCL 24/183 Request for Proposals, Aircraft Refuelling Services at Dubbo Regional Airport. Next item, CCL 24/184 Write-off of Unrecoverable Debt. Next item, CCL 24/185 Tender for the Leadership Program. And the last item, CCL 24/186 People, Culture and Safety Quarterly Metrics Report. There are no further items for consideration of the ordinary council meeting. I declare the meeting closed, the time being 8:13 p.m. Web streaming is now being completed. Thank you for your attendance here tonight.